Hey everyone, welcome to an Arena Decklist Live, coming at you from Twitch, or if you're watching the recording later on YouTube. The deck list for Mythic Championship 5 were just posted. I think we have 68 competitors total. 62 of them are playing green decks, and Bryan and I are going to go through each deck list individually. And if you've listened to any of our deck dump episodes on the podcast, you kind of know what you're getting into.
Yeah, we might have signed up for something a little bit painful here. A lot of Gulose decks, and probably not a whole lot of distinction between them. We'll certainly keep our eyes out for any incredible tech present in these Gulose lists. But what are the final counts, Jerry? Do you have them up in front of you as far as Gulose percentages? And I know green is out of control at this PT. This is basically like Gulose versus Oko, the dual deck.
Yeah, basically. I'm going to try and search for that stuff again.
My recollection is 62 green decks out of 68 players, and then the Gulose percentage is like 32 out of 68, but there's also Gulose Fires in the mix as well. That brings that even higher.
That's the same deck. That's the same deck.
Yeah, it's close enough. It's close enough that we count the same.
So Bant Gulose, 33.8%. Gulose Fires, 8.4%.
Okay.
So about 42% there. Simic Food, 16.2. Golgari Adventures, 8.8. Bant Ramp, 7.4. That's also kind of like a Simic Food deck. And then Gruel Aggro, 5.9%.
Yeah, those are some pretty horrific numbers, quite frankly. And honestly, I feel a little bit bad because if deck submission happened today, I'm not sure it still looks like this. Like, there have been some promising breakthroughs over the last few days, and I think people are starting to get things figured out. But I did my ban thing already. If you went over to the YouTube page, you saw my spiel on bans. I think now that there's been a move up of the banned and restricted date and seeing a Pro Tour this loaded with Gulose, if Gulose survives after this PT, I think there will be palpable outrage from the masses. People have basically had it with this deck. And if it does well, I think it's a done deal. It probably needs to be a done deal either way just to keep people happy at this point. Is that what we're doing bans for, to keep people happy? I'm not really sure.
I mean, at the end of the day, that's kind of what they're there for.
Right, it seems like it.
But yeah, just like, oh, I don't really like this card, just ban it. And like, I really don't want to go down that path. But this is kind of one of the problems with the early deck list submission stuff where, like you said, the format has moved already a decent amount. And I think that if submission were today, the field would likely look very different.
100%. Well, why don't we just get into it? Anything else you want to say prior to individual deck breakdowns?
No, I want to see the decks.
Let's do it. You start us off.
All right. Some of these names are going to be hard to pronounce, and I'm illiterate, so forgive me if I butcher your name. Ole Andvik, Bant Gulose. People moving towards 29 land.
I like that.
Even with for Once Upon a Times, just increases consistency, which I think this deck definitely wants. I mean, you never want the hand like Arboreal Grazer in like 2 or 3 land or whatever. So playing a higher land count makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And then this is pretty normal. I mean, people are moving down onto fairies. Ule has 2, a couple Beanstalk Giants, 2 Realm Cloak Giants, 1 Kenrith. Other than that, like 1 Agent, 4 Krasis. This is fairly normal.
Yeah, it seems mostly normal to me. I was okay with 3 Teferi. I haven't gotten to a place where I'm willing to play 2 Teferi yet. The Beanstalk Giant numbers all seem okay to me. No complaints there. 4 Hydroid Krasis, love that. 4 Once Upon a Time, love that. Those are 2 of my big checkpoints. I know there's a bunch of people who disagree with that, but that is my starting point. Also, access to the full 4 Agent of Treachery post-sideboard for Ole, and I like that approach as well.
Yeah, it's kind of awkward with only 2 Teferis, though. And also, I think once you have some amount of Beanstalks and Kenriths, you don't necessarily need the agent, like take all your Field of the Dead's plan, because you have a different plan that just kind of goes over the top of that. So
yeah, multiple plans being put into play here. And I think both are... We talked about Agent of Treachery as being more of a half trump than a full trump, and I still mostly agree with that. But maybe in combination with the hard focus on Kenrith, would love to see a deputy maybe in place of that 3rd Agent of Treachery in the sideboard, at least 1 deputy. But on the whole, just a solid-looking Bant Gulose deck to start us off.
Yep, exactly. Mana-based stuff is kind of weird. You see people playing more Just kind of like random off-color sources like Gruel Guildgate. There's basic Mountain. Having an extra basic to go with the Beanstalk Giants makes a lot of sense, and the extra off-color mana symbols for Kenrith also makes a little bit of sense.
Sure.
Next up, we have Erin Barrett playing Gulose Fires. She is playing, I think, the same deck as Autumn Burchett.
That makes sense. I think all they both worked with Yeoman on tuning this list. So this is
great.
He was very excited about this list over in our Discord. And it looks like Erin and Autumn both on board.
Yeah, so they missed one piece of technology. I'll get into that in a little bit, but this list is utilizing Fires of Invention and Fae of Wishes to try and do busted stuff sooner than their opponents. And these lists mostly cut Arboreal Grazer and Once Upon a Time because neither card works particularly well with Fires of Invention.
Yeah, so I'm still not 100% in on this Fires plan, Jerry. I think it's like fine-ish, and you have to really believe in your Fae of Wishes sideboard, and I think that's the thing that they probably devoted most of their work to, getting just the exact right mix over in the sideboard. But I am concerned about Deafening Clarion and how it lines up with some things in the format right now. It seems like there's a few decks that are looking to outsize Deafening Clarion as your 3 of sweeper. And in my experience, Fires is just another point of weakness that this deck, like, there's a bunch of uninteractive elements to the Gulose decks where you don't really have any meaningful way of stopping what they're doing. And then Fires adds in this other check you can do where they spend a turn trying to cast Fires, you Ether Gust it, or some way of re-seizing tempo, or just messing with Fires with Teferi has been a very successful strategy for me against Fires decks because you price them into casting the card again, and they should get an immediate rebuy once they play it, but being pinched to just one spell a turn makes Fires seem almost meaningless, and you can do a pretty effective job of that. So I'm not the hugest fan of these Fires lists. I know a lot of people are, though, and I am curious what your piece of tech that you're about to drop on us is.
Well, let me counterpoint you on Fires there a little bit. I think that if the format speeds up and the Gulose decks need to speed up as a result, then Fires can give you that potential boost that you need to actually keep pace with people.
Okay.
So
do you think this is representative, like these decks we're about to see, is this representative of the format speeding up? Because I would argue it is not.
Like, are people playing Fires as a result of the format speeding up, or what do you mean?
Well, okay, so if you're saying Fires is a way to respond to the format speeding up, I would argue that the deck lists submitted for this MC are not reflective of a format that has sped up. This is still just the mid-range green decks against each other.
Yeah, I mean, you can get that wrong, right?
Sure.
You know, that could be a reason for playing Fires, but you can also just assume that Fires is a way to actually get ahead in the mirror, especially when combined with Kenrith.
Okay.
So I don't know what their exact reasoning was. I mean, I listened to their podcast and everything, and I didn't really get a clear sense of it. But I don't know. We'll figure it out over the course of the weekend, and we'll see how, who chose to play Fires and why, basically.
Sure.
But yeah, the piece of technology in the sideboard, and this is going to come up a few more times, I'm sure, is instead of the shared summons to wish for, you have a Finale of Devastation.
Okay. And then you just are able to X is 10 at some point?
Yeah, X is 10, it just beats the mirror. And
wow.
there was a list that, top 32, the Magic Online PTQ, that had 2 Fires main. I was just playing around with it a little bit on Arena before these deck lists got posted, and I think that is probably the next piece of technology.
Wow,
that is
stuff.
That's what people need to be doing.
Okay. I hadn't seen that one yet. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, so I think that might potentially cost them a little bit. Maybe it doesn't really matter all that much, because if you have Fires and Fae of Wishes and you have enough time to get shared summons, like you're probably just going to win anyway.
Sure.
But it is certainly less clean than just getting Finale and OKOing them that turn.
Okay. Any other takeaways on the sideboard here?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like a lot of this stuff could probably be condensed. I like having the Teferi to wish for, which is a thing that not a lot of people have.
Your audio is going crazy, Jerry. You sounded like an angry robot for a moment.
Beep boop.
Now not a robot, but a little quieter.
I like the Teferi in the sideboard as a like preemptive card to wish for potentially.
Okay.
But I do think a lot of these things could be consolidated, and you could actually end up with like more cards as a sideboard in certain matchups. And I think that that's kind of like the key to success with this archetype.
You roboted us again. Is your microphone your AirPods currently?
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay, I have a feeling that's the cause of the issue here. But we will play through that. We didn't account for this podcast. Gerry did not travel with his equipment, so you will have to bear with maybe some slight audio issues.
I was told that there was equipment here. I was lied to.
Okay. Well, you tried. But you sound okay right now. So if Gerry turns into a robot again, everyone just forgive him.
Do you want to just pause for a little bit and I could just not use the AirPods and I'll just use like my computer mic?
So chat thinks it's when you get far away from your, like when you lean back, that's maybe what's causing it. The distance between the AirPods, and I'm assuming you have them linked to your computer right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so don't lean back. Stay where you are right now.
What do you mean far back? I'm like a foot away.
You did like a lean. You were relaxing and enjoying yourself. I don't want you to be casual.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
Yeah, but it sounds good now. So
you told me to like lean, like bring the thing further back so you could see the top of my head, because otherwise it looks weird.
I did. We all wanted to see the top of your head. Now I regret that decision and wish I just had a non-robot Gerry to speak to instead. But you sound good right now, so let's hope it holds.
Okay. Next deck. Lucas, Esper, Berthoud, Bant Gulose, very normal. Deputy of Detention in the sideboard. I really like to see those main deck. And 2 Teferi again. People are cutting on those.
Yeah, coming down on the number of Teferi. You turned into a robot again. Don't worry about it. Just let it slide. What about anything going on the sideboard here? I mean, this is a pretty stock list, just like tweaking the numbers, trying to get those numbers exactly right. 3 Hydroid Krasis, 2 main deck Agent of Treachery, 2 Beanstalk Giant. There wasn't a whole lot of room for doing a whole lot with the Bant Golo shell, and I think all the differences we're going to see will mostly boil down to these small tweaks in main deck numbers. And then what is your sideboard plan in postboard games? Lucas leaning hard on Kenrith, second copy of Kenrith, 2 Agent of Treachery, as well as 2 in the main deck. So again, the full 4 Agent of Treachery. Taking out the AirPods. Bold. I'm assuming you can't hear me right now. That's what's happening. Chat, do y'all want to talk instead? Because Gerry is now absent from this podcast.
All right, I'm using my laptop mic now.
Okay.
And
it sounds great. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think, chat? I think this sounds pretty good. Definitely better than Robot Gerry. I didn't like that guy at all.
I don't know if there's going to be any echo with you or what, but
I don't hear it right now, so it seems like you are safe presently.
All right, great.
Anything else to say about Lucas's deck?
No, I wasn't listening.
Okay, great. Well, basically, I said it's not all that interesting, and it's just about tweaking main deck numbers at this point when it comes to these Bant Golos lists. Let's see if someone can break that trend, and I think actually the next person does break the trend a little bit of uninteresting Golos lists.
Yeah, Jeremy Bowers, Bant Golos. This looks like exactly the same deck that I was looking at in the Moto PTQ. 4 Risen Reef, 2 Finale of Devastation. Very different list. So I'm not sure if Jeremy broke it or what the deal is, but we will see.
Trying to unpack everything going on here and just thinking about how long games will play out. In a world where there are fewer wraths, getting these persistent advantages from Risen Reef sounds pretty promising. You and I talked a little bit about Risen Reef decks and what maybe they could do in the mirror, but we wanted to take an approach going to like maybe 31, 32 lands, something ridiculous. So Risen Reef was a more effective ramp spell. Here with 29 lands, I have some concerns because Risen Reef, when it doesn't hit a land, feels really bad. Like you definitely want that payoff. But I find this list very interesting, and I would like to know more about it. Obviously, this is changing things dramatically. You're looking at 2 Hydroid Krasis, 2 Once Upon a Time, and normally that would get my ire, but this is a new deck as far as I'm concerned, and we're trying to do something different here. So I will definitely be keeping a close eye on Jeremy to see how Jeremy does in this tournament. Yeah,
it's weird because this is the type of deck that you actually want to cut the Once Upon a Times and just have lands, right?
Yeah.
Because of Risen Reef. Like Risen Reef into a Once Upon a Time is just disastrous. So like you play a couple as kind of a hedge and you want the first copy in your opening hand or whatever, but then past that, you just want to reef into lands, and that's all you want to do.
Yeah, maybe 30th land over second Once Upon a Time is the way to go here. Even go a little bit lower on those numbers. I don't know. But I am very curious to see what these Finale of Devastations can accomplish in the mirror.
Yeah, this list is pretty interesting. Like you said, I'm going to be watching Jeremy during this tournament for sure.
Cool.
All right, next up, BBD, Bant Gulose. BBD and Brad both played Fires in the last fandom, I believe.
They did.
So I believe that was before submission was due, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so
Yes.
they tried it out, didn't like it, even though Brad made it to the finals, and then just ended up submitting like fairly stock list, main deck agents, one Kenrith. Time Wipe versus Realm Cloak Giant. How do you feel about all that?
I am of the opinion now that it makes more sense to go towards Time Wipe. I have you covered up right now, Jerry. I'm trying to get our deck list onto the screen next to your head here.
Oh no.
It's kind of an imperfect situation, but we'll see what we can do if we can get something that works for our viewers. I forgot we did this last time, and we eventually got it to work pretty well. All right.
I'll move me the other way.
Yeah, if you just that's perfect. Now I kind of have you present, and I can pull this down a little bit. I mean, it's small, but I think if you work really hard, you might be able to read this at home. And of course, you can find these lists if you go over to like they're linked all over the place on Twitter. You should be able to track these down pretty easily. And we are now on BBD's list. So let me scroll down to there. Yeah, so them playing Fires in fandom, and we haven't gotten to Brad's list yet. I'm assuming they both abandoned Fires by the time they came around to the MC, and Brad did pretty well in fandom. He was the runner-up, I believe.
Yeah, you got.
Yeah, so interesting to see them get off that approach and want to do this setup instead. Anything unique about this list? There's a Castle Vantress in the 30 lands, so that seems like kind of a hedge there where you want to play 30 lands, but you want to get a little bit more utility. Also a Castle Garen break here, which is not something I've seen before. Not really something I've ever been interested in before. I think that's an interesting inclusion.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, people are just playing as many differently named lands as possible.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay.
I don't think that there's like anything special behind it. I don't think you're ever going to Golos for that thing necessarily. It's just a forest that has a different name.
Word. Okay. Anything catch your eye in the sideboard here? It looks like Mystical Dispute, Ashiok. Still believers in Ashiok is the squad.
Yeah, 3 copies of Ashiok. I was not a big fan of that card when I played with it because you basically needed it on turn 3. That's not necessarily the easiest thing to do, and even then they could still just have grazers and spirals and stuff and not necessarily draw circuitous routes. But I guess with more people moving toward Beanstalk, it could make sense.
Okay. Note 0 copies of Beanstalk Giant in BBD's list.
Right.
A fellow Beanstalk hater. Love it.
Only land.
Yeah. Yeah, so Ashiok is a card I wasn't thrilled with in my Golos list. I do appreciate it in aggressive list, though. I'm finding some success with Ashiok and aggression, but that's kind of obvious. We've always said it about Ashiok.
Yeah. Other than that, I don't know. Yeah, they are playing a bunch of normal cards. The mixture is a little bit different. I've been liking Aether Gust a lot lately, but that might just be as a like post submission metagame shift.
Right, and it is a different metagame now. I think that's a fair statement. So certainly keep that in mind.
Yep. Next up, we have Yawn Philip Budae, not related to Kai Budae. More Bangolos.
Looking for something interesting we can talk about here, but I haven't found it yet.
Yeah, I don't know. Vantress and Oko, 1 Beanstalk, main deck agents, 2 Time Wipe, 1 Giants. That's all pretty normal. Sideboard is just a mixture of like all the cards that people play normally.
Let's talk about the decision just to play this deck. Like, if you're playing this deck in this tournament, you believe it's broken, right? Like, you believe it's ban-worthy broken, and you'd be making a mistake not to play it because it's all anyone talked about. Like, it's obviously the very clear focal point of this format.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people try to build decks that beat it while also being good against other stuff, and mostly failed in that regard. So instead, a bunch of people were just like, well, I guess I should just play Gulose, try and figure out a plan for the mirror, and hope that, no one hard targets me, or like hope that the people who are playing Simic or Gruel or whatever can beat the random decks that are hard targeting Golos. And I think that's a fair goal,
Yeah, it seems reasonable to me. I'm not trying to crap on anyone's decision to play Golos in this tournament. It's a problematic deck, and I think especially at the moment this tournament required submission, I don't think anyone was figuring it out at that point in time. We're getting closer now, but then it seemed like it was kind of unbeatable for a moment.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And now things are shifting a little bit, but it's still pretty clear that even if people find decks that beat Golos, like Golos is still the thing that is driving the entire format to be shaped the way it is.
Absolutely. Well, Gulose and Teferi. Teferi is always there, like giving that weird side eye type look that the meme is from, where all of this really boils down to like Teferi enables just taking this approach to the game. But I get what you're saying. Teferi's not going anywhere, so we'll ignore that. Pay no attention to the Teferi behind the curtain.
All right, next up we have the actual Budae, Kai Budae, Simic Food. I was talking to Kai earlier a little bit because he was listening to our podcast and was like, oh, hey, by the way, we're playing Simic with 4 Disdainful Strokes main deck. And I was like, love it.
Yeah, nice pickup from this squad. I mean, you played this deck a lot. Did you go down this route? Did you have like the 4 Disdainful Strokes main? And were you finding success against Golos at that point?
I had as many as 3 main. I never played the full 4 just because I was mostly playing on the ladder. But for a tournament like this, I mean, you can't really go wrong with playing 4. It's basically good against everyone, and a lot of people are cutting Teferis anyway.
Right. Yeah, you definitely see a decreased number in Teferis. And plus, this is one of the decks that, like, I talk a lot about how I'm not a huge fan of Disdainful Stroke in something like the Mirror because Teferi comes down and that plan is invalidated for the whole game. But here, you find pressure. You have Oko. Turn 2 Oko is going to keep Teferi off the battlefield very effectively. You'll get a window to make your Disdainful Strokes live. So I think this approach is cool. I would also put Kai on my players to watch for this tournament. I want to see how this deck performs.
Yeah, Questing Beast is another thing that pressures really nicely, which allows you to then probably kill it by the time you need Disdainful Stroke to actually come online.
What is absent from this deck to make room for the Disdainful Strokes? Like, we saw Matt Nass play this at the SCG team tournament.
Leafkin Druid, basically. No Brazen Borrower. Voracious Hydras are living in the sideboard, so...
Right.
That's about it.
Okay. I like the look of this deck. This deck looks clean. All 4 ofs.
Yeah, leaning a little bit harder on Once Upon a Time to actually make sure that you have Gilded Goose or Paradise Druid, which may or may not be correct. I'm not sure.
There's something sweet about Kai playing the all 4 ofs, 12 Forest, 5 Island deck in this MC. Like, that feels like a deck from 1999, 100%.
Yeah, Kai, could you not cut, like, the 5th Island for the 4th Temple of Mystery?
Just no room, wouldn't fit.
A little bit more symmetry. I don't know.
Next list.
He did his best, so I appreciate it. Next up, Autumn Burchett with their take on Golos Fires, which I believe is the same 75 as Aaron Barrett.
I think card for card. My quick read is card for card.
Yeah.
Okay.
So nothing really to say there. I don't know. João Lucas Caparrós, Bangolos. Mix of Teferi, Oko, 29 lands, 2-time wipe, no Realm Cloak Giants. Kind of makes sense. People are playing a little bit more Giants in their decks now. 1 Kenrith, 2 Agent, no Deputy, except for in the sideboard. And then Assassin's Trophy in the sideboard, like Edgar and Rossum were doing.
Yeah, still don't like Oko main, but I like Assassin's Trophy, Deputy Detention. There's a clear mirror plan here, and that's the main thing. I think you're very hard on this Kenrith setup with only 1 Kenrith is a little scary to me because that's really your only trump here. Like, 1 Agent of Treachery isn't going to do it. You can play the Deputy Detention game, but your numbers are pretty low on all these cards, so you really need to get mileage out of those Assassin's Trophies. And I'm not sure you're always going to be able to do so. Like, there's a lot of spots where it's fine, but there's other spots where it's kind of blank. Oh, we have 2 Agents main as well. Okay, so Yeah, I guess I'm fine with this setup. I just wish we weren't playing Oko, but other than that, no real complaints about this list.
Yeah, I just don't think that Agent is the trump card that you necessarily want anymore, but
Mostly agree.
whatever. Next up, Marshal Carvalho, Bant Food, 4 Wicked Wolf, 4 Deputy of Detention, 10 mana creatures, 2 Once Upon a Time. So basically just splashing white for Deputy, not actually Teferi.
Yeah, wild. That's the first time we've seen this kind of setup, I think. I don't recall seeing a list that looks exactly like this.
Menguchi was streaming basically this.
Okay.
I don't know exactly like, where it came from or like who had it first or whatever, but I mean, you see people dropping Teferis more and more in the Gulose list. It kind of makes sense that you would also drop it in the band list.
You somehow became a robot again, and you don't even have your AirPods in. It was like a very brief foray into robotics. Like it lasted only a second. But I just don't know how it could even be happening at this point.
Look, man, I don't know what you want from me.
Well, now I'm just concerned that you are actually a robot, and I have formed a very close relationship with you. If I find out you're a robot, I'm going to be pissed. I'm telling you right now. You have to tell me if you're a robot by law.
Why? It doesn't matter what I am on the inside, Brian. It doesn't change who I am.
I guess that's true. No, I would still appreciate you if you were a robot. You've proven your friendship to me. I don't care if you're a robot or not.
Yeah, what the hell?
My bad. That was like a gut reaction, and I'm ashamed I reacted that way, Jerry. I'll be honest.
Oh, man. I'm trying to keep you in line. All right, Bant. Bant. Do you like Bant?
I am okay with Bant. I like it from a theoretical standpoint. I like what Marcio did here. I think going really hard on Deputy Attention is cool. It's weird though, because like while I appreciate Deputy may be better than Teferi, it's weird to play it without Teferi. And I feel like a lot of the power of Deputy Detention comes from getting the rebuys against zombies and just like never allowing them to amass an army. So that's a little bit strange to me, but I am assuming Marcio has done the work here and just is confident that that brief window the Deputy of Detention will provide is enough for his aggressive creatures to end the game. Questing Beast is going to get the job done in that time.
Yeah, I think instead of Deputy and then like later on bounce Deputy, replay it, you just wait for the big turn where you actually get to, wipe out their 8 zombies or whatever and just get them for lethal. I think that's completely fine.
Okay.
Next up, Stan Sifka, Bant Ramp. 2 Grazer, 26 land, 4 Once Upon a Time, 2 Growth Spiral, 2 Teferi. Kind of similar to what Caleb was doing when he won Fandom.
Right. Yeah, definitely that's the first deck to come to mind. And I think this is probably a slot as far as players go where people were maybe hoping for something really exciting. Certainly Stan Sifka and crew have been at the forefront of technology, and this is not the most exciting approach, even if I think it seems like a very good one. I can understand being a little let down getting to this particular entry and only seeing Bant Ramp.
Yeah, you can't break it every time.
No, very true. Very true.
Well, we expect better of you, Stan, just so you know.
Oh, don't give Stan a hard time. He's broken enough formats where you can take one off. You don't have to shatter every single format.
Entertain us.
Give us more. Another Kethis now. Bring
Yes,
me my
please.
broken deck.
All right, next deck, Gustavo Crayola.
Not
Gruel
Crayola. Coriola is my guess.
Okay. Crayola, got it.
Nailed it.
Embercleave, some Collision Colossuses, Questing Beast, obviously. I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know? This is your deck. You were the person who was high on Gruel. Not high anymore?
When?
Didn't you write an article like, hold on, I'm going to actually find the name of it. It's like Cleaving Standard or something like that.
I had a Gruel list in my article, but
Okay, so you're high on Embercleave, not Gruel. Okay.
Embercleave is what's up.
Okay, I think Gruel is terrible, quite frankly. I lose to it sometimes with Gulose and then just destroy it with everything else. And if I wanted to beat it with Gulose, I could find a way pretty reliably. I think there's pretty clear concessions you can make. So I am not into this deck. But if people didn't prepare for Gruel, if this was like, I would have to get in the mindset of the exact day decks were submitted. And if people were just starting to learn about this Gruel deck and no one had made any concessions to it, then maybe you like the way it's set up. But I feel like I'm seeing things like some glass caskets and fewer Teferis, which isn't all that meaningful in the matchup. So I would have to look very carefully at all the Bant lists, but I have a feeling this deck might be set up for some disappointment.
Well, it's kind of funny because no matter what 2-drop you play, either Casket, Aether Gust, or Devout Decree, you're going to be able to tag something out of Gruel.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's just like the random stuff like Tolsimir that's solid against them. You basically just have to figure out how to not get Ember Cleaved, which I think is why Aether Gust is so good.
Teferi helps with that as well. When I played this deck for a little while, I was surprised by how frustrating Teferi was every single time. Even though you kill it reliably, there's still like a key turn it would come down and shut off my Embercleave, and I would be very, very blown out.
Yeah, that's kind of the problem, is that Teferi just is not very good against the mono haste deck. So.
Right.
Next deck is Jacob Crook, Bant Gulose, 1 Kenrith, 1 Agent of Treachery, no deputies, 28 land, 3 Once Upon a Time, so short, half a mana source, kind of, but 4 Teferis, pretty normal sideboard, 2 Assassin's Trophy.
Yeah, nothing to really report on this deck. Next.
Andrew Cuneo, Simic Food, same as Kai.
Same as Kai. Next.
Oh, I lied. 1 Garen Brig, spicing it up.
Oh, okay. Really wanted to break up that symmetry.
Yep. Next up, Paulo Vitor Damo de Rosa, Bant Golos. I don't think that Paulo broke it. He has a Divine Visitation in his sideboard and 4 Aether Gusts. I really like those. I haven't actually played with Divine Visitation, so I don't know how good it is, but 4 Aether Gust, I think, demonstrates a bunch of awareness for what is going on in the format and how people are going to try and actually attack you.
Yeah, good answer to anyone who's trying to Embercleave you. And if Divine Visitation works in the mirror, it would be impressive. I saw it in play at SCG Indy. I don't know if the match made camera or not. I was like down in the feature match area spotting, and someone had a Divine Visitation in play in the mirror. And I mean, it won the game, but like, you would expect that if this card stays on the battlefield for any length of time, it will win the game. That's what it's supposed to do. It's just like, how reliably are you getting to that setup? The fact that it's just a one of and no real way of finding it.
Also, they could just like Agent of Treachery it, which seems pretty bad.
That's not good. You generally don't want that to happen. I mean, I think you're trying to set up a one shot, but yeah, you can respond to the one shot with Agent of Treachery and then make your own one shot, and yeah, a little scary.
I mean, you have Teferi, so you can bounce your own thing back and whatever, but it is still just like you really can't go hard on this card, and you have to be very careful when you do play it. Like, everything kind of has to be lining up to the point where it's like, well, if you are able to not lose to their agent, then it could just be a Kenrith or maybe a Deputy of Detention or just like any card, really. It doesn't have to be Divine Visitation.
Right, and it also doesn't add any counterplay to Deputy of Detention is something I would mention as well. And we kind of thought things would trend in that direction. I don't know if they actually did. I've seen actually fewer Deputy of Detentions than I expected thus far in this tournament, but not really getting any edge against that problem.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the plan is to try and set it up with Veil of Summer because, Paul is going up to 4 Agent of Treachery, so he probably thinks that is how people are also going to try and approach the mirror, so who knows?
Yeah, and as Teferi decreases, that makes sense as well. There's a lot of leveling going on with these deck lists, I think, and finding the exact right level is going to be the key, and it's really hard to know exactly what that is until this tournament actually plays out.
Yep, more Bant Golos, another MPL player, Jean-Emmanuel Depras. 29 land, 3 Once Upon a Time, so kind of splitting things there. 3 Time Wipe, 1 Realm Cloak Giant, so an extra sweeper. 2 Agent of Treachery main deck, no Kenrith or anything really fancy, and then pretty normal sideboard.
Yeah, 2 Devout Decree, 1 Glass Casket, 3 Aether Gust. This is why I don't buy Gruel being like a long-term contender to the Bant Golos throne. Pretty easy to just pick up small numbers of all those cards, and now you have 6 meaningful sideboard cards. I mean, you can even make a case for Disdainful Stroke in that matchup as well. So plenty of good options for the Bant Golos deck there.
Yeah. Ooh, next up, we got a heater.
Okay.
Mechanic Diaz, Simic Food, except this one with 4 copies of Vivian Arcbow Ranger and 4 Arboreal Grazer. Okay. I'm kind of liking this.
I like Vivian a lot. So my deck of choice presently, we'll get to it very soon, I have a feeling, is Green Black Adventures, which has 3 copies of Vivian, and that card has shined in all matchups. It's been extremely good, forcing through trample damage against the Gulose decks in certain scenarios, just amping up what your questing beast can do, picking off key threats against any of the other random aggressive decks. Vivien has been quite good in this metagame. So this is an angle I have not seen picked up yet, and I think it's actually quite interesting.
Yeah, we retweeted a Japanese player, I think, who 7-0'd a metagame challenge with like 3 Viviens in Simic and also had some main deck Disdainful Strokes. I tried that list out a little bit. Like, I think normal Simic is very good at playing a longer game, accruing some value, you know, just like building up the mana base and doing stuff like that. Whereas the Vivien Questing Beast kind of pigeonholes you into the aggressive role, but I think for the most part, that's kind of where you want to be anyway. So this might just be the right way to go about things.
Yeah, so Simic was not holding up in long games. I watched a lot of Simic versus Bant Golos at SCG Indy, and granted, we're going back a few weeks now, so things have changed. But when it Philly, thank you. Yeah, all these places blend together. I'm sorry. But the long game ability of Simic in that matchup is 100% not where you want to be. Like, they will find ways to beat you, pressuring with Questing Beast, finding early pressure with Oko. Those were the games that Simic actually was able to take down, and I think Vivien is very contemplative of that role. I do want to point out, though, like, Llanowar Elves being gone from Standard was so nice. And you can understand why, because look at the lengths this deck goes through to just get a 1-drop Accelerant, playing for Arboreal Grazer, which doesn't fit, and for Once Upon a Time, because the games where you have 1-drop Accelerant are so different, and now we're cheating on ways to get 1-drop Accelerant by playing for Once Upon a Time. I talked a bit on my stream yesterday about how I thought it was like a very elegant, intelligent piece of design to get away from those 1-mana Accelerants, and I thought it was very good for gameplay. And now it just seems like we're leaning into that angle again, and I don't like it. This is my rant against 1-mana Accelerants. Be gone from the game. I don't want you here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. Arboreal Grazer is definitely not Llanowar Elves, right? It requires you to jump through a bunch of hoops.
Right.
And
that one's acceptable. If it was just Arboreal Grazer, I would be fine with it.
I think you should just not do it, period.
Okay.
But whatever.
Okay.
Especially with Oko. That's why it's so dumb, right? That if Arboreal Grazer were a spell, even if you could find it with Once Upon a Time, you know, if it didn't provide you the body, I don't think people will be playing it. But the fact that it leaves you a body to Oko later is kind of silly.
Yeah, and it shuts down all the 2-power creatures in the format as well. So that's a huge impediment to there being actual aggressive decks.
Right. So yeah, these Simic decks definitely have a lot of room for innovation. I also like the mana base on this. There's only one Agent of Treachery in the board to like Vivien for, basically. But I found that when my plan for Simic against Gulose was to take their Field of the Deads, you really want to diversify your mana base so you can actually get the zombie value, because it doesn't matter.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense to me. You say that's the only thing in the sideboard. What about that End Raise Forerunners hanging out there?
No, so I mean, the Agent is not the only creature, but it's the only creature that you really get against Gulose.
I could see End Raise Forerunners coming up, right?
Yeah, but like you're only going to Agent them once is basically what I'm getting
at,
right?
Okay.
So maybe you don't need to like diversify your mana base all that much, but yeah, Forerunners, I don't know. That costs so much mana. I guess with Nissa, it doesn't really matter all that much, but
yeah, you have Nissa, you have Arboreal Grazer, you have Gilded Goose, you have a Paradise Druid. We'll find the mana. Incubation Druid. So this deck doing some different things to really up its mana ability. Interplanar Beacon as well.
Yeah, Beacon, I don't know. It doesn't really fix your mana for Vivien or anything, so it's kind of weird, but you're just trying to diversify your mana base. I like it.
Two is a bridge maybe too far, but 1 makes sense to me.
All right, next up, Xavier Domingue, Gruel Aggro, 2 Embercleave, 3 Collision Colossus, obviously 4 Questing Beast. I don't know. This is the mark of a man who has given up.
You think that's it? Javier's just packed it in for this tournament? I highly doubt that is what's going on here.
Yeah, I think he just gave up.
Okay. We'll have to check in with Javier and see if he just gave up for this tournament, which he didn't. That's definitely not what's happening here. He believes this deck to be good, and at the moment of time that there was submission, maybe this was the correct choice. We will see. But I have made my opinion clear. I am low on these Gruel decks, and not a whole lot changes my opinion from Javier's list.
10 forest, 9 mountain, 4 stomping ground.
That's not a 2019 mana base. It's
Nope.
just not. Yeah. Next.
Hey, green white deck. Mark Donaldson, Selesnya Adventures. Questing Beasts, no Tristani, March of the Multitude stuff. Just Edgewall Innkeeper, maybe draw some cards, play some crappy green white creatures, and then Flower Flourish.
Yeah, if this deck is going to win, it needs to be as aggressive as possible, I think. So I like getting away from the March of the Multitude stuff. I think you just want as many busted Venerated Loxodon draws as possible. This deck doesn't beat anything. That's I mean, what does it beat? I just don't know. I never lose to this deck no matter what I'm playing.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing with you.
So I'm not sure what we're targeting here. And I'm looking for like technology that'll make me change my opinion, but I don't see it here.
No, it's just beatdowns.
Okay. I got nothing. I have not had any success with these lists. Obviously, Aaron Barish just won an open with Green White Adventures.
Classic.
A classic, thank you. So there is some pedigree behind the deck, and if this is just like the style you love to play, I guess this is what you're registering, but not a believer here.
Bond of Discipline in the sideboard. Good God.
Which one is that?
Don't worry about it. Keep scrolling.
Just go to the next one. Skip it.
Once you see it, you can't unsee it. So
Okay.
just do me a favor. All right, Michaela Downs, Bank Gulose. 1 Kenrith, 1 Beanstalk, 2 Agent of Treachery, Time Wipe, Realm Cloak Giant Split again, 28 land. Sideboard, 2 copies of Questing Beast. Some people have been doing this.
Yeah, what do you think about that plan? That's not one we've come across yet.
There's just no way it kills them, right?
Right.
Eventually they find something, and then it's like, all right, I got
It might kill a Teferi. That's fun, right?
Huh?
It might kill a Teferi.
Yeah, sure. I mean, if that is a thing that you think your opponent is going to be doing, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it has great synergy with the other plans, right? Like you've got your Deputy of Detention set up, and now you're trying to do like a Deputy of Detention, Agent of Treachery, Teferi type deal, and here's this Questing Beast, and what's it getting up to? Like what's its whole jam? It's just going to attack 5 times. That's what we believe the end game is for Questing Beast. Haven't seen it come into play, and I have not feared Questing Beast in the mirror whatsoever.
Yeah, I think there is a plan that you could have to make Questing Beast potentially be good. Like if you're
like Oko Questing Beast,
stuff like that. Like if you have more actual ways to beat down your opponent, then I think Questing Beast could be a viable plan. But just jamming in a couple copies doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard me. I kind of talked over you, but like Oko, multiple Questing Beasts seems like a way that maybe you could get some aggression going. But like as soon as they play their first Field of the Dead, it's like, oh, this plan is completely invalidated at this point.
Yep. All right, Reed Duke, another Simic Food with 4 Disdainful Stroke. Reed, spicing it up. 2 Leafkin Druid, 1 Mara Leaf Pixie, 1 Paradise Druid.
I am sure that makes all the difference in the world when you're building this deck to have split up these mana creatures. I like Mara Leaf Pixie. I think that card maybe should see a little bit more play than it does.
If you can cast it on turn 2, it's very good.
Yeah, I agree with that. But yeah, basically the same list we talked about before. 4 main deck Disdainful Stroke. That'll be the key if these decks succeed.
Yeah. I mean, Reed is not going to get Legions ended, that's for sure.
Oh, very true.
I mean, he will, just not
on those creatures. Hydroid Gracis instead.
Yep. Caleb Durward, Jund midrange. This is just Gruel with 3 Ember Cleaves, some Rotting Regisaurs. That's a big boy for Embercleave. And then Rixmati Reveler.
I like this better than the Gruel decks, quite frankly. Like, I actually see how this wins games against opposing defenses, and like the whole Embercleave Rotting Regisaur thing doesn't sound awful to me. Granted, you're pushing your mana base much further, but like if you don't think there are aggressive decks in the format, shouldn't you? Doesn't that make sense to just go as hard on your mana as possible and be like, I'll take the damage and let this all work out?
Yeah, I mean, it's not just about taking damage, right? It's like you have the Gruel mana base was already not good, and now you have 4 black cards that you want to cast on turn 3, a removal spell, Rixmati Reveler, and you get 13 black sources. So it's not even about like taking the damage. It's just like, well, this increases your inconsistency a little bit. I mean, I like it. I think that this is better than normal Gruel for sure.
I'm with you. You get access to Duress in the sideboard, Noxious Grasp in the sideboard, and of course Legion's End in the main and sideboard. So yeah, I would vote for this over the typical Gruel deck for sure.
Same. Next up, Kenji Egashira, 4-color Golos. No fires, but does have Clarion, has Oko main, 3 Ashioks in the board, and a bunch of one-ofs, basically. I don't know.
Yeah. So this is the first time I'm seeing this deck list, so I'm trying to wrap my head around it and think about what we're doing here. We splashed red, so we got Circuitous Route over Time Wipe. And that's it, right? I mean, we didn't actually change the mana base all that much. 2 red, 3 red. Maybe there's like an additional red Guildgate. So the mana base is basically the same. It's just changing our sweeper from Time Wipe to Clarion. And
yeah, there's still 2 giants to go, 2 Clarions, but
right.
Yeah, I mean, if Kenji thought that people were going to be playing like Knights and Mono Black and maybe a smaller Gruel deck to try and beat up on Golos, then playing Clarion makes sense.
Right. But that's not the case, unfortunately. And I think also this being open deck lists, you're going to have problems with Clarion because it'll be even worse against the Gruel decks because they can set up to play around Clarion. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't see a huge amount of upside to playing this version over the more stock banned versions.
Yeah, true. I mean, you're kind of making a hard read on the format, which may or may not pan out.
Right.
So.
Right. You got to take shots. I mean, if the alternative is just every single person shows up with banned Golos, I would much rather see an attempt to try and call people out than to just lean into that as hard as possible.
Yeah, exactly. Next up, another MPL member, Jessica Stefan, banned Food. She played this in the last split. I think played it in the Team Open in Philly. Also just retweeted her today, I think, like 7-0ing the metagame challenge. So she's been playing a lot of Bant and basically just crushing it.
Yeah, she's in on this deck. She crushes with it. You see cards that line up very well against the format. The Teferi Deputy Detention combo is here. But it's weird to me that if this deck is the answer, it's weird to me it hasn't shown up in greater numbers, right? Like, this has been a known quantity basically very early on, and you would expect this to have gained some traction. I mean, maybe there just haven't been the events required for a deck like this to get traction, for any deck really to get traction in the face of Golos. And this is the spot where it can shine for the first time.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, I felt that way about Simic too, where it's like I was playing Simic and doing pretty well with it, and it's just like, why aren't more people playing this? And Bant is effectively the same thing. And, certainly a little bit stronger in some places, a little bit weaker in others. But Golos has just been the narrative,
Right.
And it's not like Simic annihilates Gulose. It's just like a deck that is very good that has a reasonable shot against it. So
yeah,
I understand why that kind of gets buried.
Yeah, well, I mean, Jess is up to all the same tricks that we are believing in for the Mirror and for the Simic Food decks, except she's got access to all of them. We have Agent of Treachery, we have Disdainful Stroke, we have the Deputy of Detention, we have Teferi, all that stuff coming together into a package. I don't know. This might just have an edge on the field. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, also Questing Beast backed up by Aggression.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, another high point.
Next up, Bangolos, Bertrand Fagnoni.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of planar cleansings. 1 main, 2 in the board. It is basically the best card against bans, like these various Planeswalker decks.
Absolutely is.
Yeah, pretty good against fires and stuff too. So that has been one of the cards that I've been the most scared of.
Yeah, I like this read, actually. This seems like a very small deviation from what everyone else is doing, but this is a lot of planar cleansings. And as long as you have your mirror plan locked down, which this looks like basically the same mirror plan we've seen elsewhere, except Ashiok again. You and I not super high on that, but there are 3 Agent of Treacheries, Teferi to rebuy those, no Deputy of Detention, but a little bit of setup here, and I like the hard read onto planar cleansing. Certainly, if there's a ton of Simic Food, like you said, one of the best cards you can have access to.
Yeah, maybe a little bit awkward in the face of Nissa, but like the fact that it just like cleans up almost everything is so good, because Simic will mostly get into spots where, they'll have like an Oko left behind that can still pressure you after a Realm Cloak Giant or whatever, and this mostly cleans up everything.
Yeah, I played a planar cleansing very early on in my first list, and it just bailed me out literally over and over, dealing with those boards filled with planeswalkers, where it was the only card that could save me. I actually think I had one in my first Esper list as well, which was like instrumental to me doing anything with that deck, which is now completely unplayable. So I have a very high opinion of planar cleansing in general.
Word. Patrick Fernandez, Bant Golos. Patrick's been on an absolute heater as of late. List is pretty stock.
27 land.
Ooh.
3 once upon a time.
Ooh.
Those numbers are low.
Those numbers are low.
That gives me pause.
There's something that we don't.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe everyone else is playing too many lands. We'll see. But those numbers frighten me right now.
Yeah, pretty stock list, really. But I don't know. I'm confident that if you put like stock Bant Golos against stock Bant Golos, Patrick is going to win.
Okay.
So be interested to see how he does in the tournament.
Keep an eye on that. Look at this deck list. Did not expect to see this one.
Eric Froelich, Mardu Knights, 4 Weaselback Red Cap.
How about it? I mean, what do you think about this, Jerry? You were high on Grixis Knights. I played some Grixis Knights. It actually seemed completely reasonable against Golos. If Ifro is playing this, I 100% think he is favored. He thinks he's favored against Golos. Do you buy it? I mean, this setup looks very aggressive, backed by Embercleave. It's really what you want to be doing. And he gets the only tri-land in the format. And I think it's probably worth it because the mana in some of these other setups for the aggressive deck's just awful. At least this deck will occasionally be able to cast its spells on time.
Yeah, Ifro's list is definitely very interesting. 16 1-drops. No Stormfist Crusader. Is that the RB 2/2 menace?
Yes, that is
correct. I like
correct.
that card a lot. Instead, Ifro has 7 3-mana Knights with Midnight Reaper and Acclaimed Contender. Acclaimed Contender can obviously find Embercleave, which is kind of nice.
A lot of card advantage.
Yeah, I've mostly wanted to like move away from those cards though.
Huh.
But it does give them a lot of staying power, so I don't know.
Icon of Ancestry as well for a little bit more staying power.
Yeah, 24 land also.
I am looking forward to playing some games with this list. This looks interesting. One of 6 non-green players in the entire tournament is Ifro. But there's something worth trying here. I am curious as to whether we're dealing with something special.
Yeah, Spectre Shriek, Tectonic Rift. Got a lot of spice.
Mm-hmm. Love those Tectonic Rifts. Love it. What nice tech.
Gross. All right. Canister, Golgari Adventure. If you've been following him at all, you know this deck.
This is my favorite deck in the format. I actually like it better than Bant Golos. Now, that's not me saying it's better than Bant Golos. I've just played enough Bant Golos at this point where I'm over it, and I'd rather do something different.
You just asked me for cards to borrow for the PTQ this weekend.
I will be playing this at the PTQ. I think it has claimed. What is happening? Your headset's going crazy.
Headset, I'm running.
Well, whatever means of communication you are presently using has gone absolutely berserk. Okay, we're going to assume that's sorted out. Anyway, this Black-Green Adventures deck, it's awesome. I love it. It does a great job against pretty much everything in the format. I've beaten Bant a whole bunch with it. I have been pleased with like my mono red matchup. I've been pleased with my Gruel matchup. On paper, this deck looks terrible. I get it. It looks so underwhelming on paper. Like, how does this ever form a coherent plan? The pieces fit really well together. It grinds very well. Vivian is an absolute house. The card that I'm least sure of is Nissa, because you don't really have any mana payoffs whatsoever. It's just basically like a huge Bitter Blossom. But I have not cut it yet. I've basically just been playing exactly this list, and I've been winning a lot. And talking with folks in the Discord who have been playing this list, they're winning a lot. X-Files said today that he doesn't lose to anything. In fact, I think he just hasn't lost with this deck list since he started playing it.
Damn.
So this is a very good deck, and I will pick Canister to win this tournament based on this deck. I mean, I think he found something special here. I am impressed.
Okay. A little weirded out by like Vivian, Murderous Rider, Questing Beast, Rankle, like definitely a tall order for the mana,
It
but
is.
Druid maybe solves all problems. I don't know.
It is. I mean, you have issues where your mana doesn't come together, and then your cards are so powerful, and you have so much staying power that you're able to bail yourself out of it. I mean, this deck can go real long, like surprisingly long, and I love a good aggressive slash I will play 26 turns of this game deck. Like it really toes that line very carefully, and it has effective game plans against everything in the format, as far as I can tell.
Word. Next up, another MPL member, Christian Hauk. Celestine Adventure, deck doesn't beat anything.
Okay, next.
Wait, Apostle of Purifying Light. What is that card? Pro Black?
I think it's pro something.
Yeah, Pro Black. Exile a card from a graveyard. How exciting.
What card would you ever exile from a graveyard? There's got to be something that is meaningful against, right?
No, it might just be because it's protection from black, right?
I guess so. I mean, what's the size on it? I honestly don't know the card off the top of my head.
It's a 1-dub 2/1 human cleric.
Okay. That sounds pretty medium to me. I mean, you're supposed to be attacking through zombies? Is that what you're doing?
That sounds heinous.
I don't know what else you'd be doing.
Maybe. I don't know. Okay. Another MPL member, Alexander Hain, Bant Golos, completely stock. Nothing to say. No words.
Okay, I'll save the words.
All right. Yuki Ichikawa, Simic Food. Don't disappoint me, Yuki. 2 main deck Disdainful Strokes, main deck Aether Gust, 1 Agent of Treachery, 26 land. That's a lot with no Grazer.
4 Growth Spiral. Yeah.
Okay.
What do you think about Growth Spiral versus Grazer? In a deck with Oko, that seems a little strange to me.
I don't know. He's trying to play longer games. It makes sense.
Okay. Questing Beast in the sideboard, not the main deck. Sticking with Voracious Hydra in the main deck. I know how much you love a Voracious Hydra.
That card is very good sometimes, but mostly garbage.
There should be more main deck Aether Gust in this tournament, right? Like almost certainly.
I mean, if 90% of the decks are green, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good read. I like that a lot. Give props to that.
The thing is that Stroke counters Golos and like the Wraths and stuff, so it makes sense even if you recognize that there are going to be a lot of green decks, and it's like, oh, hey, Stroke might just be better.
Oh, there's a good point in chat. The 6 decks that aren't green, they are red, right?
Oh, I believe that.
Yeah, so you just hit all 68 decks in the format with Aether Gust?
Yeah, but it's a question of whether or not you're actually hitting relevant cards, right?
Sure. I think a large portion of the time the answer to that is yes, and then when it's not, you'll tolerate that because you've hit a bunch of meaningful cards. I mean, look, as far as Aether Gust goes, actually not a huge fan of the card. I'm continually disappointed by it, and I find it doesn't bail me out in the situations I really want it to. If there was a bunch of Embercleave, I'd be more inclined to buy Aether Gust. It gets much better there. But I've started trending down in my numbers of Aether Gust in most of my decks, so it's interesting to me that you're really high on it right now. But if you're looking for just it to hit everything you're playing against, this is a high point for the card, certainly.
Yeah, I just don't want that card against Golos.
Okay.
And once you make that conclusion, it's like, well, then I should not main deck Aether Gust in this tournament, right?
Okay. Yeah. There's when half the field is on Golos. That makes sense.
I like Aether Gust when you have enough staying power that you don't mind just like, repelling their thing for a turn.
Okay.
But obviously, if you have access to all the Doom Blades in the world and you're not necessarily playing a long game, then that sort of card is not that great. But like any deck with like Krasis and Oko probably could make good use of Aether Gust.
Any opinion on 2 main deck Castle Vantress here?
I mean, Yuki's playing a long game, right?
Right.
Like you said that deck did not do well at going long against Golos.
It did not.
And now he has Spiral instead of Mana Creature, so he's not getting hit by Wraths as much.
Sure.
As Agents and Vantress and stuff like that. Like I think he is just planning on like chaining Krasis and having some interaction with Disdainful Strokes and like actually playing a longer game against them. I think that's a pretty reasonable plan.
Yeah, that's the problem he's trying to address. Maybe he has found a way to do so.
Yep. All right, Huey, Simic Food, 4 main deck strokes. Basically Kai's list, main deck Aaron Brigg. Looks like the same sideboard too.
Yep. They must be pretty confident on this deck, and not really a whole lot of dissension from this group of players who often work together.
Right. Yeah, you got to assume that they played hella against Gulose and figured that this is the best way to go about things.
I wish I could even begin to comprehend what is happening with your microphone right now. How is this possible that it just occasionally turns you into a robot? That doesn't make any sense. If you were a robot all the time, I'd understand what's going on. And if you were lagging, that would make sense to me too. But the present predicament, it just defies all logic.
I don't know, man. I'm sorry. I can just tag out and you can do the rest of the video without me.
No, you're sitting through all of these banned ramp decks with me. You're not escaping this. Oh. We signed up for this. Now we're here for the long haul.
Well, I kind of have to go to the bathroom, so.
Maybe I can give you a bathroom break. If you give me 2 more decks, I'll give you a brief bathroom break, and then I'll chat with our chat for a little bit while you do that. How does that sound?
Okay. I'll go to the bathroom and just not come back, though.
Okay, sure.
All right, Martin Juza, Bant Ramp. 2 Teferi Time Raveler, 2 Deputy of Detention, 2 Agent of Treachery. This seems like a bunch of medium hedges all over the place.
Martin changes decks a lot. Having just one fandom with Mono Red, you would think be high on that deck, but no, stepped away, went back to Bant. What a weird tournament that was. Many, many people hiding pieces of technology. That makes sense. This is the higher stakes tournament. Of course, you want to put away your really good stuff for this. Ashiok in the sideboard alongside 4 Disdainful Stroke. I have to think all of these players are confident that they have found their move against Gulose, and I will tell you that Gulose has not adapted in any meaningful way. So, if in testing these decks found success against Gulose, they should show up to this MC and just run the table, and Gulose should look absolutely foolish if all these players have comfortably and honestly reached that conclusion that they found a good Gulose matchup.
Yeah, and we'll see if they're actually, living in reality or not.
We shall see. There are a lot of people who claimed a good Gulose matchup that I scoffed at. Decks like this, I am willing to believe. I'm not going to scoff when these people tell me they have found a good setup against Gulose. That seems plausible to me.
Right. Next up, Greg Kowalski, Bant Ramp, same deck as Martin.
Yep, exact same list.
Chris Kavartek, Simic Food, 4 Marrowleaf Pixie, Brazen Borrower, Questing Beast, Vivian. So very aggressive, and the plan against Gulose is just evasion.
I like that. Alongside Vivian, this list looks interesting to me. I like a lot of what's going on here. I think there's a lot of damage that this deck is able to force that the typical food setups are not able to do. This has very clearly defined its role as the early game deck, not looking to go long because we don't have Hydroid Crisis until we get to the sideboard where it's just a one-of.
Yep.
So this is a cool approach. Yeah, I want to try this deck. This looks promising.
This is the Simic version of Gruel, basically.
Okay, that's a fair way of putting it.
And Chris has also just been crushing it as of late, and is another player that I'm excited to watch during this tournament.
Yeah, especially with this deck list. I think this is a nice approach.
All right, last deck, and then I'm going to take like a 5-minute break or whatever.
I'll give it to you.
Bryan and Gerry, Gruel Aggro, 2 Ember Cleave, 23 lands, Pelt Collector, Robber of the Rich. This is normal-ish.
I've been impressed by Robber of the Rich, mostly out of the mono red decks. Haven't seen a ton of it out of most Gruel setups, but the card itself has been very good. I am concerned about our 4/4 drops, 3/5 drops, Ember Cleaves, 23 lands. We do have 2 Once Upon a Time, 2 Domries to kind of cheat a little bit.
Yeah.
But I am worried about our ability to cast our spells in a timely fashion. But I'm not worried about these 3 Tectonic Rifts in the sideboard. That card going to be doing some work, making things unblockable, blowing up lands. You love to see it, Jerry. The hot tech, the Tectonic Rift. Look how thrilled you are about Tectonic Rift. Did I do this? Is this my fault that these Tectonic Rifts are in this tournament?
I think so. It might be.
I hope not. I don't want that on my conscience.
You let people know that the card existed.
Someone let me know it existed. Like we were having a conversation. We were just talking at SCG, wherever, because I can't remember places, about like cards that destroyed land. And someone was like, "Isn't there one that is also, or no, cards that make your stuff unblockable?" And then someone was like, "Isn't there one that also destroys land?" And then I went searching and found Tectonic Rift.
Yeah, and there's also Cosmotronic Wave and stuff like that. So.
Right. Okay,
All
you're
right.
free. Go take 5 minutes. I will chat with our chat for a little bit. You go do your
All right.
thing.
What if I take 10 minutes and also walk to the store and buy a beverage?
Okay, go get yourself a beverage. I will get myself a beverage. I will come back and talk to you, chat. Stay right there. And then we'll come back and finish all this good stuff.
All right. Let's see if I remember to come back or not.
You better come back. You promised you would. All of these people,
I didn't
all of
promise.
these people will be disappointed if you leave.
They'll forgive me.
No, they won't.
I'm used to people being disappointed in me.
All right. I will be back in 2 minutes. Gerry will be back in 10 minutes. I'm going to take some questions from chat, and then we'll get back into this in just a bit.
Okay, bye forever. No, Chad, I can't find my wallet. All right, I got it.
I just saw Gerry on camera. He hasn't even left yet. I'm back. I have a cookie. I also have a beverage. And I'm not going to tell you specifically what beverage it is, but I'll just say laws no longer apply to me. And so this isn't Skype, Darkest Mage. This is Google Hangouts, and it's because we're not very smart, and that's the whole reason. I have no idea what y'all are talking about. No idea. But I am above the law. So, what do y'all think about these decks? Are we disappointed? Pretty disappointed. I mean, we knew this is coming, right? Don't we literally have video chat in our Discord? Discord's chat has been terrible for me. Does seeing this many decks playing cards like Tectonic Rift and Forex Disdainful Stroke main board to deal with Gulose means they should just be playing Gulose? Not really. I mean, if that's an effective plan and they found a way to beat it, sounds good to me. Yeah, this is a raspberry water. And it's very good. This is the first time I've had raspberry. Does anyone have advice for what we should be using for these setups? I looked into some services, but I couldn't find anything that was like a clear slam dunk. So this is the best solution we found. But I will take other advice if someone can think of somewhere better for us to do this kind of setup. Surprised there's no mono red. I don't know. I was not impressed by mono red in this format. People kept winning things with it, but it's underwhelming versus Oko. I'll say that. Oko's messed up. Discord's been fined for D7D stuff. Okay. Maybe it's on our end. Yeah, DM me, Mason. I would appreciate that. I'm sorry I'm eating on stream. I try to never do that. But I really wanted this cookie. It looks very good. So many Tulsamirs in sideboards. What is this card supposed to be for? I mean, it's good versus mono red, if you believe they're going to show up. Is it possible that Oko is the real pressure point of the format more than Gulose? I mean, I think it's the 3-mana Planeswalkers. I think Teferi gets as much of the blame. Teamer, 3 question marks. Thoughts? Jeff Hoogland's list. I've never lost to that list. Jeff seems to do quite well with it. I like it in theory, but I haven't played it yet. I think Canister's deck is great. I really do. I'm very impressed by it. I was not impressed by it on paper, I will tell you that. Three mana walkers with 1 mana accelerants. Yeah, I agree. We have gotten to many Bant food decks. There's a lot of them. Hot idea. Fae of Wishes board and Team Rec to get Ral 4th expansion. I tried it. I don't know. Ral's terrible. Don't play Ral. But I might want to go back to Fae of Wishes again. Yeah, Canister only had 3 Questing Beasts. 3 Questing Beasts, 2 Rankle. If they just banned Field, Oko would go ham on standard. I am worried about that. I am worried. Yeah, I saw those Fae of Wishes popping up in Modern in blue-white. Looks dope to me. I ordered 4 foil storybook copies because I'm hoping I get to use them. Thoughts on Canister's blue dredge deck? I think that deck is functionally pretty bad and gets much worse when you know about what's going on there. The raccoon loves grapes. He sure does. How adorable that raccoon is. Do I think that when they ban Field, Esper stacks can come back? I haven't thought about that. It was pretty good against the unrefined versions of the Bant and Simic deck, so it's possible. Definitely possible. Thoughts on Golgari Adventure? I have said my thoughts so many times on Golgari Adventure. It's great. It's my favorite deck in the format. I think it's fantastic. Don't think they will ban Oko 3 more months with Throne as the main set they were selling. I agree with you, Fire Shoes. Seems very unlikely to me. I'm not sure that, like... I don't know. I hate talking about this topic so much. It makes me feel so negatively about the state of the game, and I'd rather just focus on what's good about it. I've played a lot of good games in this format. There's a lot to be frustrated about, for sure. But I have played some good games. Banning Oko is fine. It's a Modern staple now. That is one of the upside of making these like ultra pushed cards, right? Is that at least they'll cut it in Modern if you ban it in Standard. Is it reasonable to ban Goose instead of Oko to deal with 1 mana accelerant problem? I don't think that'll ever happen. I do hope that's the takeaway, though, from all of this, is that, like, 1 mana accelerants are problematic, 3 mana planeswalkers are problematic. I hope we never do static abilities on planeswalkers ever, ever, ever again. Why does it seem like the testing team hasn't been doing their job? I promise you they're doing their job. Their job is freaking impossible. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And that's the hardest thing about having these conversations is that it creates this impression that, oh, such failures, WotC doesn't know what they're doing. No, their job is impossible. Like, figuring all of this stuff out with a team of like 10 people, it just doesn't make sense. It's not a realistic thing to do. And then it gets released to millions of people, and we all slave away and figure it out and break things in half. And it's unfortunate. I do think, like, there are some tenets to their design philosophies that I have objections to. And I think that's fair. And I think, like, you can have those respectfully, and different people can have different feelings about the way the game should be set up, right? Like, I believe this is a poor way for the game to go. Just like I believe Modern is not a particularly great format of Magic. But Modern is arguably the most popular format of Magic, and many, many people feel differently than I do. So you have to realize how broad the audience are and how many people you're trying to placate with your designs. Yeah, if all these cards were boring and nothing was ever broken, people would complain about that too. So the job is just impossible. I agree pushing Teferi is bad. I mean, that's a clear mistake, and it's just not realistic to think a mistake is never going to get made, though. That's the problem. And I'm sure there are many, many things that led to Teferi ending up in the state it was in, most of which we have no idea about. And it just didn't get unpacked properly, how problematic the card was. Yeah, that's a great point, Mason. One bad assumption makes everything fall apart. Like, if you think some card isn't playable, and it is, and then the ripple effects of that completely devalue all your testing. There was like a standard format, and this is a long time ago before things were as well-defined and certainly well-staffed as they are now, but there's like the Valakut problem, where all their Valakut decks were built wrong, so they didn't know how problematic Valakut was to play against. And so there you go. All of your testing is completely worthless because you don't have Valakut as a major player in the format, and it's actually tier 1. And then it just ruins everything you try to do from that point. Yeah, you have to push cards. You have to occasionally be willing to make a mistake to have success. That's just the way life is. Ifro, we were high on your deck. We gave it good marks. One of the few that got good marks in this discussion. But I like what you're trying to do. Yeah, I think I like the approach of just pushing more cards and banning more cards, but I know that doesn't work for everyone, and I'm respectful of that opinion. So, look at that. Gerry came back.
Wait, we're being respectful of opinions now?
We are respectful of opinions around here, Gerald.
What's happening?
We're just talking about like the state of Standard generally and how challenging it is to successfully design Magic cards and create a cohesive Standard environment and to still make Magic cards that people want to buy without just shattering the entire format in half. Thoughts, opinions, hot takes?
I mean, it's hard.
Yeah.
The end.
I agree.
I do appreciate the fact that this is 5-set Standard and it feels very powerful. It's clear that they took a lot of shots for trying to get cards to be exciting and powerful. And I will always vote for that in favor of them just toning everything down.
Mostly agree with you. So I did my take on bans, and I came out pro bans and actually pro more frequent bans, and having a policy that's just very open about the fact that there will be more bans going forward and letting that be built into the cost of cards in some ways and letting that expectation be clear. What do you think about that, as opposed to just because it feels like a disaster every time we do something like this, and that is, I think, eventually going to inhibit the ability to take shots?
I don't know. I feel like you can take shots while also having safeguards in place.
Okay.
You know, so like maybe Gulose Field of the Dead was not a huge deal in FFL. And if that's the case, like they just missed a thing, you know, and that sucks. But I think that if there were just like more Blood Sun type of things, right? Like why did that card rotate as Field of the Dead came in, basically?
I mean, my answer to you would be that the castles were coming, and those are kind of flagship cards, and you wanted to encourage play with those.
but it's such a low cost, right? Like if
Oh, I
someone
agree.
has
I agree.
one in the sideboard, they're not going to side in against your like 2 Garen Briggs or whatever.
Right. I mean, I'm just presenting that because these are the arguments. Like, I've heard arguments of this ilk before. Like, people say, why does Oko start at 6 loyalty when Fry is around? And the answer, I heard that in some column it was given that they didn't want Oko to die to Fry. And it's like, okay.
Why?
Yeah, I don't understand that at all. But, like, it seems like that was the approach.
No, see, that's the thing is like I want Oko to die to Fry.
Right.
If you have like
I want everything to die to something.
right. If you have a base green deck and they want to side in Fry against you just to kill your Oko, let them.
Right.
At least then they feel like they have agency, you know?
Okay. Yeah.
Whatever.
Dex.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Matthias, Alfredo, Leverado, Golgari Adventure looks just like Canister's list, maybe different sideboard.
Card for card main deck and one card different in the sideboard. There's a Garrett Cursed Huntsman over a Liliana. I think is the only difference.
Okay.
Deck's still
Cool.
great.
Godspeed to them.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, Raph Levy, same deck.
Yeah. Well, this is an interesting testing team that has assembled somehow. These are 3 names that I don't necessarily associate with each other.
Or it was 2 people that begged Canister for a deck list because they know that he's the nut.
That's possible. You never know.
Canister, being the nice dude that he is, was just like, yeah, sure,
Yeah,
whatever.
just gave it away. Yeah, well, so I was streaming Canister's list, and I was kind of like tongue-in-cheek calling it his MC list because everything Canister says, like, you have to take with a grain of salt just because that's his personality, and you never know if he's trolling you or not.
He might joke around, but he's not going to lie to you.
Well, that's the thing, though, is like, his brand is being so like aloof that I think if he had misrepresented what he was playing, people would just be like, oh, that's Canister, and not even take it as like being hard lied to. But that feeds into his ability to just be like, yes, this is what I'm playing, and people like me to be like, I'm not so sure if I trust him. So it certainly worked out that he just revealed his MC deck, but it was surprising because nobody else did. Nobody was willing to just say, I'm playing this.
He doesn't give a shit.
That is true. Very true.
That's it.
Okay, I'll accept that explanation for sure.
All right, next up, Seth Manfield, Bant Gulose. Bunch of cards.
Yeah, Seth like crushed one of those E-League events, went undefeated throughout, took home like $10 million for his efforts, and I would assume probably played something very similar. Just played stock Bant Gulose there, playing it again. Certainly someone as good as Seth, very willing to just take the best deck into a tournament and let it ride.
Yeah, not a bad idea. All right, now we got Menguchi, Bant Food, 4 Deputy, no Teferi. So yeah, what he was streaming, what a couple other people have been playing as of late and doing pretty well with.
Yeah, it sounds like they are pretty high on this deck, so we'll have to see how this plays out.
Next up, another MPL member, Savage, Just Guy Fires. This is the Planeswalker version, although does have a couple Kenriths just for spice, I guess.
I like Kenrith here. I think it's another way, a good mana sink, a good way to get some utility out of all these Drawn from Dreams and Shimmer of Possibilities that you're using. You can find it pretty reliably. I like Fae of Wishes. This deck is fine-ish. I've lost to it with Gulose. I lost in the top 8 of the last Phantom Legends I played with Gulose. I'm just thinking about how it lines up with like everything else going on in the format. Like this seems pretty nightmarish against all the Bant decks playing 4 Disdainful Stroke main, or all the food decks playing 4 Disdainful Stroke main. And then once Bant gets access to its sideboard, I think this kind of gets wiped there too.
Yeah.
No Elder Spell type stuff going on, so that's a point in favor, but I am concerned about the heavy Disdainful Stroke decks and how this is going to play into them. Really reliant on Teferi.
Yeah, I mean, this deck gets to play 4 copies, right?
Mm-hmm. Look at that emergency powers hanging out in the sideboard. You love to see it. Love to see a little emergency powers.
Yeah, Chance for Glory, Command the Dread Horde, all those casualties, like a lot of very impactful things, and then also the Elder Spell combo kill potentially.
Right, love that Elder Spell combo kill setup. If you remember, this was like basically my deck on day one, missing some of the pieces. Like I didn't have Shimmer of Possibility, and that does seem like a pretty big improvement. Didn't have Kenrith, but was working on this Jeskai Planeswalker stuff pretty early on, and it was good. Like it has a lot of potential. I am actually surprised by how little fires there is going on, how little Jeskai, be it Cavaliers or this deck, because I think there's still a lot of power in that deck rolled up.
Yeah, I do too. All right, next list: Gulose Fires, Teo Motier, couple copies of Solar Blaze.
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of Solar Blaze in the format.
Yeah, I forgot that card existed actually.
Mm-hmm. Now that you remember it exists, what do you think about it?
Seems pretty good.
Kills a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean it kills most things. Like their Goose Lives and Leafkin Druid and stuff like that. But you're killing a lot of the impactful stuff. I guess like Knight of the Ebon Legion not dying is potentially a problem.
Right, you have to time it very carefully if you're gonna get that. I guess it's impossible here, right? No Teferis.
Right. So I don't know. Maybe it just cleans up enough of the things that matter to warrant it over Time Wipe or whatever. The fact that you need 5 mana with Fires to cast it could be a thing if you're finding that you need to like play Fires and play a Sweeper on the same turn. But I think at that point I'd rather probably just max on Deafening Clarion.
When I was playing the Jeskai Walker's deck very early on, I realized that Justice Strike was incredibly good in the format. It just killed everything you cared about. Solar Blaze has a lot of those same properties, so I think this is a good find.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, curious to see how that plays out. That could be pretty impactful.
Mm-hmm.
And then sideboard, pretty normal. Does not have Shared Summons or Finale, which I think is a miss, but the rest of the stuff's pretty good.
Yeah, now once I've seen the Finale technology, I can't imagine not having it, be it such a low cost to add it to your deck. It seems pretty incredible.
Yeah. Next deck, Ashley Munoz, Golgari Adventure, not really canister because no Planeswalkers, but does have Questing Beast and Rankles.
Yeah, this is like a little lower to the ground taken for Once Upon a Time, so maybe your concerns about that little bit rough mana will be massaged away. I don't know enough about this particular version of the deck to comment on its strengths or weaknesses versus canisters, but it's got a lot of the same core, and these cards are very, very powerful combined well together. If there's a card that stands out as like the card that you're really missing, it's Find Finality. Excuse me. It's very key to going long, playing against Wrath, finding Questing Beast over and over. Obviously, you have some of that with Order of Midnight, but buying back multiple cards, and just like when you have nothing, being able to buy back Edgewall, Innkeeper, Foulmire Knight, and just getting a bunch of cards in your hand very quickly. That comes up over and over and over. So I really like Find Finality, but the basic core is here. And maybe the Assassin's Trophy to pick off a Field of the Dead every now and then will pay dividends as well.
Yeah, I mean, that also gives you interaction against Fires, which could be huge.
Very true.
Next up, Grace Nosses, Bant Golos. Again, looks fairly stock. A bunch of agents hanging out in the sideboard, some Assassin's Trophies, 29 land again. Any comments?
Nope. Next. Already over.
Matt Nass, Bant Golos, SCG Philly. He made top 8 with Simic.
Right.
And I asked him why they spewed off so much equity with him playing Standard instead of playing the combo deck in Modern. And he was like, well, I have the Standard tournament to prepare for.
Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah. And despite making top 8 of that tournament, ended up just being the villain and playing Golos himself.
Yeah, I don't know if it was just like my timing for watching Matt's matches, but I saw him battle against Golos a lot, and it never looked pleasant on his side of the battlefield when he was playing the Simic deck. So I could understand why he was pushed towards this, given at least the matches I saw, but not a whole lot to report on this particular deck list. Nothing super exciting going on here.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't have the counter magic that you need, you know?
Right.
You see, like, all the Pantheon people main decking 4 copies of Disdainful Stroke.
Yeah. Very different.
But yeah, Divine Visitation, same as Paulo's list, I would imagine.
I think there was something different about Paulo's list, but I don't recall exactly what it is off the top of my head. Close enough. That's all that matters.
Yeah. Gabe Nassif, another Pantheon member. Well, I believe that he is still on Pantheon. Pantheon affiliated.
Right. Does Pantheon even exist anymore? Does anyone know what you're talking about when you say Pantheon?
I mean, it's the same group of people.
Okay. Ultimate
know.
Guard. It's Team Ultimate Guard, right?
Well, yeah, but Pantheon was always Ultimate Guard plus a bunch of other random people.
Right.
So whatever. 4 disdainful strokes. That's how you know they're on the same team.
Right. Robot Jerry agrees as well.
Tight. Good job, Robot Jerry.
He's actually my favorite co-host now. I just want to work with Robot Jerry all the time.
Man, you were not very high on Robot Jerry.
I turned the corner. I turned the corner real fast.
Okay. All right, Brad Nelson, Gulose, same as BBD.
Yep, looks the same to me.
Cool. Ethan Newbert, Gulose Fires. What do we got?
Nothing to report.
Yep. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, there's no takeaway here. No exciting cards out of the package. Not seeing the technology you mentioned. Just a pretty stock Gulose Fires list.
Yeah, next up, Greg Orange, Azureus Control Aficionado. You know it's bad when he's playing Gulose, but he has the Risen Reefs and the Finale of Devastation, so...
Right.
I don't know if this came from Greg or the other person whose name I forgot already, but gonna want to see how this actually plays out. Couple Cavalier of Thorns in the sideboard too. That card's very nice.
Yeah, were those in the first deck list we saw? I don't think they were, because I feel like we would have noted those. But I like that card a lot. That's a nice grab here. Playing well with your Risen Reefs, blocking every single thing in the format. And I'm not even just saying that because I bought all the Cavalier of Thorns in the world. I've already sold those. You don't even have to worry about me being biased anymore.
Oh, I still have mine.
I think you missed the boat.
Did I? Are you sure?
I don't know. I mean, I sold mine for 10. They can't be 10 anymore, right?
Well, let's bring it back.
Okay. That's our job. As soon as this deck's banned, we'll get to work on the Cavalier of Thorns strategies.
Let's see. Cavalier of Thorns, core set 2020. Ooh, 650.
Yeah,
they're still more expensive than what I paid.
Right. Yeah, I paid 3 and sold for 10, so I did very well in my Cavalier of Thorns.
Yeah, it must be nice. All right. Park Hats. Zianis?
Zianis.
Okay. Gulose.
Zianis. And that's got to be a silent D, right?
I don't know.
There should be a press kit. Why isn't there a press kit? Is there a press kit? Wait, I can't say this if there actually does exist a press kit and we're just terrible and we didn't properly figure out how to pronounce these names.
There's definitely not a press kit, dude.
Okay. There should be.
Yeah. One deputy. Love it. Agent. Maybe overrated.
Agreed.
A lot of Night of Autumns. Sure.
Yeah, if you play a bunch of fires, you'll be happy to have that card. There's not a bunch of fires, but in a theoretical different tournament, it would be great.
I mean, there's enough fires to care.
How many fires decks have we really seen? Like 6, 7, 8?
Well, there's the Gulose ones, and then a couple Jess guys, as far as I can tell.
Okay. Yeah, I'm done with that deck list. Let's go to the next one.
All right. Sebastian Pazzo, Gulose, 4 Teferi, Agent, Time Wipe, Giant Mix, 3 Once Upon a Time, 29 lands, Devout Decree, and Aether Gust in the sideboard, more deputies in the board. I like it.
2 planar cleansings as well. Yeah, seems like a well-prepared sideboard.
Yeah, seems like he has basically all of his bases covered.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, John Rolfe. All right, John. How bad did you blow it?
Just playing Gulose. It's hard to blow it that badly when this is your decision.
He worked with Paulo. So, yeah, the Visitation for Aether Gust.
Okay. Deck's good. A lot of MPLers submitting Bant Gulose.
Yeah, Carlos Ramau, Bant Gulose, 1 Oko, 2 Teferi, another Oko in the board.
Heavy Beanstalk Giant commitment from Carlos.
Oh yeah, 3.
Yeah. How many basics? 2 island, 2 forest, 1 plains, 1 swamp.
And 3 passage. That's fine.
I think you're playing with fire, but it seems like most people don't agree with me. Although I will say I am pleased. Beanstalk Giant throughout this tournament, much, much lower representation than it had at SCG, where everyone was like, Beanstalk Giant's unbeatable. And it seems like a bunch of people kind of falling with my conclusions, not super high on Beanstalk Giant. I'm fine with 1, play a Beanstalk Giant, but these 3 Beanstalk Giant setups, not a believer.
Well, I like having a rampant growth that you can once upon a time for that is not Arboreal Grazer. So I like a couple copies.
I understand.
Combos with Kenrith, 3 is a lot. 3 has felt like pretty clunky, pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next up, Louie Savato, another canister devotee.
Yeah, a lot of folks on this list. I'm expecting big things. I keep saying it. I think this is going to be the standout deck from this tournament.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Next up is Ray Sato, Simic Food, same as Yuki's list.
Yeah, it looks the same as Yuki's. Main deck, Ether Gust, Tamio in the sideboard. Yeah, I think we're tracking pretty closely.
Yep, another Selesny Adventure deck from Stefan Swartz. A Giant Growth.
I mean, I love me some Giant Growth.
Ooh. Can you combo Giant Growth with Giant Killer? Yeah, you can.
Wow, Giant Killer on your Giant Growth. Not bad.
Is there anything you actually want to do that to?
If you're having to do that, you're not really living your best life, but it wouldn't surprise me if it comes up once in the tournament.
All right. Takeshi Seno, Golgari Adventure, old school list for Lucky Clover.
Yeah, Lucky Clover is unfortunately just unplayable, I think. But I mean, I tried this deck very early on, and I was just like, this is so clunky and terrible. And as soon as I moved to the canister version, I was very impressed. So, not a huge fan of this version of the deck. Maybe I could come up with a theoretical metagame where you really want to have access to Smitten Swordmaster type stuff. But I just want to play good cards. I don't want to play these horrible cards.
Yeah, that's the thing, is this deck is good if you're playing like a normal game of Magic and you're kind of like grinding with people, and then in the late game you get to burn them out with Smitten Swordmaster. Realistically, the direction I think that this sort of deck needs to go to is actually play Beanstalk Giant with the Clovers and probably a couple copies of Fine Finality. So then you can actually grind with people, and then when it gets to that point, you have enough mana to actually build a big enough board and start doing like the Order of Midnight chains to rebuy all your creatures and stuff like that.
Sure, that makes sense.
But yeah, for the most part, like with this and Aristocrats, all the other decks just kind of go over the top of you. So it's really tough to just like nickel and dime them out, especially with Kenrith and them just having like more life gain.
0 copies of Aristocrats in this format, right? It makes me sad. That deck seemed like it had so much promise. I know we both were high on that deck for a while.
Yeah, I mean, it's really cool. Just all the other decks are like, oh, look at my 12 mana and what I do with this.
Right.
You know, it's absurd.
Yep.
Shahar Shanhar, Simic Food, 4 Disdainful Strokes. We have seen this. And then we have the hero, Li Shiqian, Mono Red Cavalcade.
So, Li Shiqian has a day 1 buy, which has to have played into this decision, right? Like, there's some part of the decision to register Mono Red Cavalcade that is contemplative of the fact that you've skipped all the muck and mire. And to me, that says he believes he's going to be playing against Gulose a bunch, I think. Like, that's the way I would do it. Like, oh, I just believe Gulose is the best deck and it will filter everything out. Because otherwise you can't really make any kind of informed metagame read like that. And I could see this deck just kind of smushing Gulose if they're not set up for it, which they really aren't right now. Like, you have to be contemplative of Cavalcade to really have any shot whatsoever against this deck.
Well, the very telling thing is the fact that he has Tybalt Main and Shock in the sideboard, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is very clearly trying to metagame for day 2.
Yeah. So this is a shot for sure, and we'll have to see if it pays off for Li Shiqian.
Anything could happen. Next up, Mike Sigris, Bank Golos, 4 Aether Gust, 1 Divine Visitation on the sideboard. We know who he worked with. And then we have Miguel the Cruz Samoas, Rakdos Sacrifice.
Okay, so we spoke a little bit too soon. 4 Witch's Oven, 4 Cauldron Familiar, 4 Mayhem Devil, 2 Judith the Scourge Diva. I want this deck to be good so badly. Claim the Firstborn as well as Angrath's Rampage. What is Claim the Firstborn? Why can I not think of that card right now?
1 mana, threaten, CMC.
Right. Okay, cool. It's interesting.
This popped up on Moto. This was the first time that people were playing that list.
Okay. Any opinion on this deck?
I played it a lot. If people are doing like small bally things, I think this deck is pretty good.
But most of the field is playing Golos. That's the antithesis of small bally things.
It is the antithesis of that. You can set up game states for sure where you just burn them out.
Right.
Like, the deck is resilient to like sweepers and then making zombies and all of that stuff. It is just like when you have Kenrith or a bunch of Krasis, that's when it gets tough. But like Claim the Firstborn can actually offset the Krasis. So
Yeah.
you do have a shot. You're not drawing dead to Gulose by any means.
All right. This seems cool.
Next up, Gabby Sports, Gruel Aggro. No Ember Cleaves, no.
Main deck Sarkin the Masterless means maybe we could fly over some zombies.
Yeah. A lot of dragons, 2 Sarkin, 4 Skargan Hellkite.
Yeah, so that's an interesting setup, right? Like, you could theoretically lock out zombies from attacking. I mean, you have to never get wrathed again and just be able to sit there. So I don't know that's going to come up all that often. I don't know. To me, the already questionable power of Gruel Aggro came from Embercleave. Like, it was the only reason I saw to be playing the deck. This build frightens me to some extent.
Well, Gabby has the Tectonic Rifts in the sideboard. So
oh, no, never mind. She's going to win the tournament.
Yeah.
Crushed it.
Game over. All right, Ben S. Mardu Knights.
Oh, so Ephraim found a partner in crime to play this deck.
Yeah, they've been working together for a while, actually.
Okay.
I worked with the two of them for the original Mythic Invitational.
Right, I remember that.
And Ben always likes these kind of like off-the-wall aggro decks. Like he was playing Rakdos for a while in Standard when Mono Red was the best deck, and he always does things a little bit differently.
Right. Well, I said I like this deck. I like the approach here. Ephraim said he would like to draw well in the tournament when I asked him for his review of his deck. So
weird.
Yeah. Not a bad plan.
All right. How do you feel about this? Your boy, Andre Strosky, playing Bant Ramp, 2 Teferi, 3 Deputy. You said that Andre is like the biggest clout haver in Arena World,
yeah,
right?
Gave him #1 in the clout rankings.
So how do you feel about this?
I mean, I just believe him. If they are playing this deck, I am of the opinion that they think they have found a way to reliably beat Gulose. I do not see how you register this in any other circumstances. So, now, I don't know if that means I can pick up this deck and beat Gulose every single time. They might have a specific sideboard configuration that they're really high on, and they're like just hoping to go 50-50 in game ones, but they love their post-board configuration. All that stuff is going to have to shake out when you play the Mythic Championship. But I believe if they are playing this deck, they have an edge against Gulose. And this deck lines up well against the rest of the field, too. Like, it shouldn't have huge problems against, say, the Simic Food list with, like, 4 Disdainful Strokes. You're fine there. Your Okos are very meaningful. You have Teferi to shut those down, and you can protect your Teferi with this deck. How's Deputy Retention in that matchup? Thoughts on Deputy Retention versus Simic Food? Seems fine, right?
Very bad against Wicked Wolf.
Okay. What about just picking off, like, the Hydroid Crisis? Like, you just lean into that angle.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. And, like, obviously you can do some tempo-y things early where, like, you take their 2-drop mana creature and make it so they can't wolf you on 3, and then by the time they do wolf you, they just get back this kind of, like, irrelevant thing. So you can maybe create swings that way. But for the most part, I think it's just like a liability more than anything else.
Okay. I think I have my narrative of this tournament coming together in my head. I'm going to save it to the end. We'll wait till we get through all the decks. But I think it finally is clear to me what's going to happen. And I'll save you the trouble of watching the tournament and tell you exactly how it's going to end.
Perfect. Next list is Oliver 2. Same deck as Strosky.
Cool.
And then we have some spice from David Williams. Gulose Fires, 2 main deck Unmoored Ego.
Just going for it, huh?
I love him just taking a shot.
But I don't think Unmoored Ego is actually good against the Gulose decks. That's the problem with the card. Like, if it was, I would love it.
It's still funny.
It's kind of funny, yeah. I've been so underwhelmed with Unmoored Ego in these matchups, and it just blanks very quickly, and they have so many other ways to beat you. And granted, you still have, like, your very good Gulose plan here, so it's got some backup here, and maybe I'm speaking about it more in the confines of traditional Gulose, where you're just trying to do, like, it's crazy to call traditional Gulose fair, because it's not, but it's more fair than this particular approach and the Fae of Wishes setup. So maybe this is the way to go with the more aggressive Fires approach. I don't know. I'm just not high on Unmoored Ego as a card.
Yeah, me either. But we'll see. We'll see if Dave is able to get some people. He's definitely another player to watch in the tournament because he's doing something a little bit different.
Sure.
Oh no.
This is how you know things are out of control.
Shota Simic Food.
Shota's just like, yeah, I'll just play Oko. It's broken, and I'm not going to think about anything else.
Basically the same as Ray and Yuki. He has 2 Disdainful Strokes main, but Shota has Brazen Borrower instead of the Aether Gust main.
Right. Yeah. Again, I have a feeling they think they have a very, very good Bant Golos matchup.
Ooh, we got another brew. Ken Yukihiro, Mardu Knights.
Look at
Not
this
only
approach.
Eve, but also Steel Claw lands.
Wow. Okay. Well, so each fewer creature you play in your Knights deck is a little bit problematic with Embercleave, right? Like you want as many bodies as possible, and Steel Claw Lance works against that to some extent, but maybe just having a big body is meaningful. Does Steel Claw Lance grant anything else besides sizing to Knights?
Nah.
Okay. I am concerned that this deck will just get pretty effectively brick-walled. Gotta find those Embercleaves.
Ken's sideboard is 12 removal spells and 3 Chance for Glories, too.
Perfect. What could go wrong? That's a wild setup.
I don't know. Rotting Regis or Embercleave is obviously very good, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, we talked about Caleb's deck. I was pretty high on that combination. Just having 8 equipment is very strange to me. But I guess you have to be prepared to play a multitude of games, and you're not always going to get Embercleave online. And I'm just thinking about the hand where you open it, and it's like Embercleave, Steel Claw Lance, Rotting Regisaur, Tournament Grounds, and like you're supposed to make a playable magic deck out of those mush of cards. Sounds a little scary.
Yeah, I mean, maybe like Steel Claw Lance definitely gives you a lot of play through sweepers, especially with Ace from Fervent Champion. You have Flash from Black Lance Paragon. It's like I can see games where you just get swept multiple times and you're able to play through it.
Okay.
And then also Steel Claw Lance pumping power matters for Embercleave, which means that you have more like backdoor ways to trample Death Touch with Black Lance Paragon and like actually get in for a lot of damage.
A lot of things are already going right in that scenario, but you are right. And that was a huge part of Embercleave setups when I was high on the card was the Death Touch trample shenanigans. Like that's what it was really all about for me.
Right. And that's it. That's all of our decks.
That's it. Okay. So do you want to know how this tournament plays out?
Yeah. Spoil it for me.
So
I don't mind.
Adventures is dope, and we'll take one of the final slots. I don't know which side. I don't know who it's going to be, but there will be a green-black Adventures deck in the finals. And then the rest of the tournament is determined. The first checkpoint is, are these people playing these Simic and Bant approaches actually finding positive matchups against Golos? I just have to believe the answer is yes. I mean, it's like deck malpractice to show up for this tournament and not have found yourself a favorite against Golos. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Look, man, if we were gonna find people for deck malpractice, I would be broke.
Yes, I would have a very large deficit I'd be paying.
And B, I think you would just end up getting 80% of the people in all tournaments, you know?
Maybe that's true. But I am confident that these people think they have found good plans against the Golos decks. So the question becomes, which of these... I think I would say there are 3 distinct approaches, like the Bant approach from the Czech team, the Pantheon approach with 4 main deck Disdainful Strokes, and then the Japanese players who have their setup. Which of these 3 decks is favored against one another? Like, which has the edge in the mirror setup? And I think it's like maybe the Japanese version is the one that has the most direct play against the other decks. I don't know. I would have to think a little bit more about that. Who exactly has the edge as far as that goes. It really depends how well the Disdainful Strokes are leveraged.
Well, yeah, I mean, Stroke is a perfectly fine card in the pseudo mirrors.
Right.
And the Japanese have 4 Wicked Wolves and 2 Voracious Hydras, also an Agent of Treachery. Their mana is not as explosive. They have Growth Spiral instead of Leafkin Druid, but I don't know, that might be good in a field of Wicked Wolves.
Yeah, I kind of like that. I kind of like just squeezing more cards out of your deck.
Yeah, and then certainly if the games go long, they have Vantress and stuff like that.
Right.
So,
right.
I don't know if they run the risk of like actually getting beaten down by like Questing Beasts and stuff like that in the other Simic decks. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting problem. So I don't have the answer to that part of the equation yet, but whichever one of these 3 decks, which has the edge, will occupy the other final spot. and then Green Black Adventures will win the entire tournament. And I'm saying that because it's the deck I have chosen to play this weekend, and I don't like to be wrong, so I need this to be right, so my fragile ego can stay in one place.
Yeah, I don't want to be wrong, therefore I will put all of my eggs in one basket.
And it's a small, a very tiny represented basket as well. I could just very easily just go Gulose, where I have a huge chance of being right, but I've taken this very aggressive line instead for some reason.
Yeah, sure.
No
I don't know what I'm going to play in the PTQ this weekend yet. I mean, it's Monday. The format's going to shift like 5 times between now and then, so we'll see.
Right. Well, I just didn't want to buy the Gulose pieces, quite frankly. Like, that definitely played into my decision of what I was going to play in this tournament. So
I own them all. You asked me for questing beasts and stuff.
Right.
You know all the Gulose cards.
You need those. You're going to play Gulose.
I mean, I might have multiples. I definitely own 12 Guloses. I know that.
Okay. I don't think you have 2 complete Gulose decks. I mean, to be fair, though, probably the only cards I'm missing are like 3 Field of the Dead and the Goloses themselves, and then like random commons. I should have everything else.
Oh, I definitely got random commons for you.
Regardless, I'm in on Green Black Adventures at this point. I have staked my reputation on it, so I'm just committed. Nothing I can do. And I have a video going up, I guess tomorrow, with my experiences playing Green Black Adventures yesterday. And I went undefeated, so obviously it's the best deck in Standard, because I'm not very good at Magic, and when I win a lot, I'm like, oh, I should pay attention to this. So
you are obviously very good. You keep smashing all the people in fandom. Just wait until like maybe someday they give you an invite to one of these MCs and you just like win the PT. And
I'm never getting an invite. I went off on Twitter today. They're gonna blacklist me because I was mean to people on Twitter, and that's the end of it. I think that's how these work. You can't be mean to anyone on Twitter to get invited to the MCs. That's the qualification rules.
Yeah, that's mostly true.
Right. So I'm probably out for at least another year or so. Hopefully in the future, though, I get to play one of these. Because Lord knows I'm not qualifying the old-fashioned way. That's not realistic.
Edalomi pointing out that you have one of the highest Pro Tour win rates.
Shh, we got to keep this going. It's the only way I can sell myself. Just quiet. It's a small sample size. Small sample size. Doesn't mean anything. You want to take a couple questions from chat before I let you leave? 2 questions. Yeah. We'll take 2 questions.
I want to start playing with these deck lists, but I guess I'll answer some questions first.
Okay. Who's got a question for Gerry and I?
A good question, too. Not a crappy question.
Efer says there are some pretty horrible people invited to the MCs. Think I've got a shot. Okay. Well, that's something to hold on to in these trying times. There's worse people than me out there.
Efro, name names.
He's not going to name names. Don't put him on the spot.
No, just text me. Text me. It's fine.
Privately name names. All right, who's got a question? What do you got for us, chat? You've been hanging out with us this whole time. I appreciate everyone showing up. Very cool stuff. If you missed any of this, we will put it up on our YouTube page, youtube.com/arenadecklist. By the way, if you're not there, we put up daily videos, like legitimately daily videos. Gameplay videos. What's that?
YouTube.com/arenadecklist.
Yeah, youtube.com/arenadecklist. Okay, let's take some questions.
Do we think that Field is going to get banned on Monday? Darkest Mage wants to know, and I know that a lot of people have asked that also.
I think the answer is yes. Not because it needs to be at this point. Like, I think there's reasonable counterplay options, but this MC, the percentage of the field playing the deck, public perception, combined with the decision to move up the banned and restricted date, all forms this horrible mash where I just think hands are tied at this point. And if it doesn't get banned, I think people are going to be outraged. And we don't have a lot of data to pull from, but there was just a standard classic at SCG Philly. And this is like brand new standard. People should be pumped, right? Like chomping at the bit to play brand new standard. They got like 56 people. And that's horrible. Those are really, really bad numbers.
I didn't know that. That's a joke.
Yeah.
That's like, honestly, though, release weekend is typically pretty small because people want to wait to see what the good decks are before they actually buy in.
Well, this wasn't release weekend. This is week 2. I'm talking from Indy, the one that Kevin Jones won with Bankolos. There was like 56 players in it, which is a really, really problematic number. And just based on sentiment, like what people have said to me on social media, what people have said to me on, comments on all of our stuff, people are not happy about this format. And I get it. Like those horrible battlefields that you see as we get to the end of Gulose games, with just zombies piled everywhere. Like, people don't want to play those games for the most part. They're not excited to dive into those games, and
What about modern?
they don't want to do it in modern either. But unfortunately, it seems like Urza is also pushing things in that direction as well. So um, that's another discussion too. Like, I think modern is probably suited up for a ban sometime soon, because where there are three pillars of the format and you banned one, what did you think was going to happen with the other two? Now they're just Mox Opal decks and Ancient Stirrings decks everywhere. Although Storm won the Modern Open. How about that? Good showing from Storm. Did not expect that one.
Yeah,
Um,
Storm is for sure.
but regardless, I do think a ban is coming on Monday. What do you think, Jerry?
I think field will be banned, and then it is possible that action gets taken in modern, but I doubt it. I feel like they should give it more time, but
Mostly agree. It would be a wholesale like redo of the format if you do a ban to Mox Opal. Like, you have to think about really what you're trying to accomplish with modern, and that is a high cost ban that you're leveraging on your player base after just doing one in Faithless Looting, which mostly turned out okay. I think I don't think a ton of people were really crushed as far as their modern investments, but Mox Opal would be devastating to a lot of folks.
yeah.
So I think that one has to be super careful. Any chance anything beyond field goes in standard to Teferi?
No, I don't think so. Like the numbers on Teferi are trending down, and it's difficult to say whether or not Teferi is actually being oppressive to the format right now. Like, is there a control deck that would exist or whatever if Teferi were not there? Would we see more Ember Cleaves or whatever? I don't know. I don't think so.
I don't know. I just think like the ripples of Teferi go so far that I legitimately do not know what the format looks like if Teferi's not in
Yeah.
it.
No, it is really hard to tell, obviously. But I mean, there are things like Gruel questing beast specifically, even Oko, and like using Oko as a a reason to defend like keeping Teferi around, because like Oko can pressure Teferi is kind of silly. But I don't know. I think that there are enough ways to answer it and enough strategies that Teferi is bad against. Like I said, I mean, people are cutting it from their decks because it's not positioned very well right now. So
Yeah, it seems pretty unlikely to me as well. I Again, though, if you put Field of the Dead away, I am curious what the format looks like, and is it just dominated by these non-Field of the Dead decks that have shown up for this MC and may do very well at this MC? We'll see. We'll see how it all shakes
Yo,
out.
Cancer's got a nice question for you.
What's that? Do I think Field of the Dead is going to be unbanned 3 weeks before fall 2020 set releases? I hope so. I hope we get in those reps with Field of the Dead one last time.
I
Um,
if my Field of the Deads get banned, I'm gonna hold on to them, just waiting for that
right.
2 month window where I get to play with them again.
Well, you're fortunate that they do see play in Modern and Legacy, Jerry, so your investment is not ruined.
One or two, I don't know. Typically when things like that happen, I'll just sign them and send them off to patrons. So
Right. Linda Ellerby says lack of counter magic as a result of Teferi has caused Standard to become an arms race of who has the most over the top endgame, and I mostly agree with that. I think that's been my assessment of the last few standards. It's just like, how big can you go, and Teferi makes it all safe. And it's telling that like all of these weird decks we put together, like, so I think back to the release of 2020, and we put together Scape Shift, and the first Scape Shift decks weren't very good, and we put together like Flood decks, and like those decks weren't very good, and then you started putting Teferi in them, and all of a sudden they were all completely functional, unbeatable. Even like Kethis, putting Teferi in Kethis is like a huge breakthrough, because now you can safely get that kill out of nowhere, and your opponent can't interact with it. So it keeps all of these huge end games safe over and over and over. And I just don't think it's good play patterns, even if you can't point to Teferi and say, you're making this horrible.
So adding Teferi to Scape Shift changed things because it allowed them to like Scape Shift end a turn and like actually combo kill them, whereas Sorcery Speed Scape Shift was basically never safe.
Right.
And realistically, what they should have done was cut the Scape Shifts, played Gulose, maybe played Teferi, maybe not, you know? But like, I don't think Teferi necessarily helped Scape Shift get to the final version of the deck, you know? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't know
It
if
did
I
help.
totally agree with that.
It did help them, but it also confused people and had them find a different solution that was not cut your escape shifts and play Gulose.
Right. But like Teferi took on a secondary role as well, though, with the deputy detention sub game. It was equally important in that setup as well.
Yeah, no, it was still good, obviously, but
And I think it would have remained, even if like hard Golos was the way to go, I still think Teferi in that context is very important. And just like, I don't know, making Golos activation safe is a big deal as well. Like knowing you're getting through your turn after this Golos activation is important. So I don't know. Maybe I'm overstating Teferi. I just know it's the card I feel the most in all the games I play. Like it just seems so meaningful every single time it's on the battlefield.
ooh, Ruth Muse, will they ban Field of the Dead in Historic preemptively?
Does Historic even exist? Have you played a game of Historic? Is it out on Arena?
No, so whenever I go to build a deck, it has this bar on Arena where you have to select the format before it tells you how many cards are actually in your deck.
Okay.
And when you select the format, it then resets all your filters.
Okay.
So I'll like start building a deck, forget about the
Switch.
bar, and then be like, wait, how many cards am I at? Well, in order to figure that out, I just select the format, and then it just resets everything. And yeah.
So you've been foiled by the interface. Maybe someday you'll get to build Historic deck, Jerry.
But it's also just ridiculous because there's only standard on Arena.
Right. Completely
No, I'm
unnecessary.
not building a historic deck. If you offer me historic tournaments or whatever, maybe I will.
Someday they'll show up. How about some unban talk? Do you think it would be safe for a birthing pod unban in Modern? Any opinions on birthing pod coming off the bench?
I just don't think that's particularly fun. Like, yeah, you can ban a bunch of stuff and then unban things until pod is good, but then like, do we actually want to live in that world? I don't think we do.
I think there needs to be a clear goal of the. I actually think there is a clear goal of the Modern ban list, and it seems to be to ensure the most fun for players, which, as we said, that's generally the role of ban lists. But I think Modern has been more cognizant of that, like more directly cognizant of that. And some people seem to think the goal of the Modern ban list is to be as small as possible without shattering the format in half. And I do not feel that way. Oh, I took a cookie break before. You missed it. There's just some cards that you don't need to have in the format. It doesn't do anyone any good. And I would put certainly Twin, 1,000% Twin, and like 900% Birthing Pod on that list. Okay, Jerry agrees. One more question. Let's see.
God, these cookies are stale and gross, but I haven't eaten all day.
My cookie was excellent, just so you know. I thought I'd rub that in.
I just grabbed some crap to eat while we were doing this when I was at the gas station. So
Johnny Katz wants to know what is the best cookie. That's going to be our final question for today.
I don't know. I haven't eaten every single cookie. How can I possibly answer
what's
that?
your favorite cookie then? If you're going to be pedantic about
I
it.
really like snickerdoodles.
Snickerdoodles are good.
Also, if you make a good ginger snap, that's also S tier.
Okay. I have a really specific answer, and it's probably meaningless to almost everyone. But if you live in like the upstate New York area, you are familiar with the grocery store Price Chopper. And Price Chopper sells these cookies in their bakery aisle, which I don't know how else to name them, but they have like the sticker of the candy that are baked into them right on the outside. And these are just like Hershey Kisses, ultra loaded chocolate chips. So not only do they have Hershey Kisses in them, but they also have like cut up Hershey bars stuck into them, and they're just loaded with all these chocolate pieces, and the actual cookie is very good. So if you were close to a Price Chopper, I want you to go there, look for these Hershey Kisses cookies, because they are dope, and I love them. And I can't get them anymore. I miss them.
Positive Sean says a ginger snap is barely a cookie. I agree. Asian Brown says Thin Mints are OP. Girl Scouts. What was the cookie that I just smashed a bunch? Were you around for this?
No. Are you talking about samosas?
No.
Those are the best Girl Scout cookies.
I have to look this up. I haven't had them for like a little over a year. I think the last time I got them, the Girl Scouts set up camp outside of PAX West.
Okay.
Which is genius, by the way.
Yeah, great idea.
And I bought like one Thin Mints, one of this new thing.
Apparently they're not samosas, they're Samoas. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So I bought the Girl Scout s'mores. That's what it was.
Okay, I've had those before. They're good.
Oh my God. So I bought like one Thin Mints, one s'mores, one of something else. And then the next day, when I went back to PAX, I just bought like 10 boxes of s'mores.
Wait, are samosas a real thing too?
No, you're thinking like mimosas? I don't know.
Did I combine Samoas and mimosas? Can you do that? Is that something that's like a real thing you can do?
I think that's allowed.
Okay. Samosas are Indian food. They are a real thing. I knew it.
Okay.
And I actually, I had one today, and that's probably why I thought of that. I had a potato samosa from Whole Foods. It was good.
Mystery solved.
Okay. Let's end this impromptu podcast. We talked about a lot of decks. We had a lot of fun. We met Robot Jerry. We ate some cookies. And now we get to tune in on Friday and see what happens. Although I already told you what's going to happen. Watch it anyway, though. Just hang out, see what's going on.
And you should raid someone.
What's that?
You should raid someone.
I will raid someone. I will send all of you folks somewhere. And
like, share, subscribe.
Like, share, subscribe. Yes, thank you, Jerry. Good YouTubing. Of course, youtube.com/Arena Decklist. And we will record a podcast episode tomorrow. What are we going to talk about now that we did this?
Whatever we want. I don't know.
We should have thought about that before we agreed to do this, but we'll figure it out. We always figure something out. But thank you, everyone, for coming. And we will see you all again sometime soon.